I have a special guest joining me on the line from Bet on Fighting and on Twitter at Fight Odds on one of our favorite guests, and he's back to talk about a big show and some big news, Nick Kalikas.
Hey guys, thanks for having me back on.
It's our pleasure, and no shortage of things to talk about because I believe we've got a card every weekend for the rest of the month and several going into February, so there's a lot going on.
Yeah, it's really going to pick up and get rolling again soon here, which is good. More MMA, the better.
Yeah. I suppose in your line of work, there's no such thing as too much MMA, or am I wrong about that?
Well, yeah, sometimes. I mean, you get through that phase where, a few times throughout the year where it's a little bit overload. But, then you get a little break and you're back to it. So it's nice. And we kind of had that during the holidays. So I'm ready to go back to it.
Yeah, I'm getting ready for it too because I'm taking 2 trips in the next 3 weeks. I'm going to Oklahoma City for the Tarek Saffiedine versus Nate Marquardt card. And then on the 26th, I'll be in Chicago for the Johnson versus Dodson card. So my plate feels full, but I'm not sick of it. I'm really looking forward to the challenge. And speaking of that Saffiedine versus Marquardt card, why don't we go ahead and jump into that before we talk about some of the other news? Because one of the reasons I called you up was that we want to know what the lines are before these fights take place, and I'm sure you've got some good ones for us.
Yeah, we actually got the main card and the preliminary cards up right now too. So a full slate of, I believe, 11 fights altogether with lines posted on every fight.
Yeah, it looks like. Yeah, and some of these fights have changed just in the last couple of days, in the last week or so, like the Pat Healy versus Kurt Holloway one. And, it was looking like he wasn't even going to have an opponent until they found Holloway at the last minute. So, honestly, that's a question I want to ask you before you even give the line is, how do you set a line like that when you get somebody on late notice who really isn't well known and doesn't even, if you try to go to Wikipedia and look him up, he doesn't even have a record.
Yeah, you definitely got to take a lot of things in consideration, including the short notice. But anymore these days, a lot of these guys are constantly staying in shape. So they're going to come in most cases, at least in decent shape. But you do definitely have to factor that in. I mean, the short notice, step up in competition. But Kurt's a pretty solid prospect. He's a pretty well-rounded fighter overall, too. So he took this fight as an opportunity, and I don't blame him. Now, he's coming in as a huge dog, though. I mean, you can get Kurt right now at plus 300. So Pat Healy's coming in as a favorite, minus 450. So it's pretty steep juice. Healy's pretty much a grinder, and I think that's what he's going to try to do here, and he should be successful.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if he took him to the ground and just worked him over for 3 straight rounds. But, we'll see what happens come Saturday night. But, yeah, Holloway probably just hopes he can score the upset and make a name for himself. But that's why the odds are where they are right now, is that he is a dog in this fight. So good luck to him with that.
Yeah, like I said,
it's kind of funny. Go ahead.
No, I'm saying it's a big step up for competition for him. But again, as long as he performs okay and hangs in there okay, he's going to get another fight. And hopefully the second time around, even if this is a loss for him, then the second time around he has a better chance to prove himself, I think. And we can't count the kid out. Like I said, I think he's well-rounded, and he's probably more well-rounded than Pat Healy overall. It's just the style that Healy has is going to be a bad matchup for Holloway, I think, in this fight. So Kurtz should be in an uphill battle.
It's something I've actually heard a lot of debate about lately is whether or not we're getting to the point in MMA where everybody is so well-rounded anymore that you can be pretty good at a lot of things but not really great at one thing. And if you face an opponent who's great at just that one thing, he may eat your lunch. And I don't know if I buy that theory per se, because I think everybody training all styles is going to raise the level of MMA as a whole. But we do see some guys out there. We see the Josh Koscheck's of the world that can rely on their wrestling most of the time and then just have enough punching power to get by. And they seem to win more of their fights than not because they're so good at that one thing, they take advantage.
Yeah, no doubt. And if they're that good, like you said, if they're that dominant, whether it's grappling, we're going to get into some of that stuff on this card, actually, because there's a lot of guys on this card that are particularly good in one area. And when they're that strong in one area, of course, they got an outstanding shot to win. So, but overall, I think you're seeing more and more of the MMA fighters, especially the prospects out there, coming in more well-rounded.
I agree. Now, let's go ahead and talk about the 2 prelim fights that I don't even know if these fights are going to be shown anywhere. I haven't heard they're going to be on Facebook. The only people that may see them are the guys who are actually there in the building like me. But it's surprising because we've got at least one big name on that prelim, and that's Jorge or George Gurgel, whichever way you want to pronounce it, versus Adriano Martins. And I'm just going to go out on a limb here and say Martins is probably a dog in this fight.
No, actually, he's a sizable favorite. He's almost a 3-1 favorite in this fight. I know the mainstream fans know George Gurgel a lot. They're more familiar with George for sure, and the guy's a talented fighter, no doubt. But to me, he just hasn't ever been able to cross that line of being a great fighter. He's just a solid, good fighter. He just hasn't been able to cross that line to become a great fighter. And now he's been on a long layoff. And I think Martins is kind of coming into this fight at the right time. He's on a roll as far as his win streak goes. I think he's beat better competition than George Gurgel as well. So even though he is a little wild and it's always dangerous for him standing up a little bit as far as defensively goes because he leaves himself open at times, but he's so aggressive and he's a BJJ black belt as well. I think he's going to be able to pretty much do what anything George Gurgel throws at him. He's going to be able to counter and do a little bit better. So that's why you're seeing him coming as a favorite. And I think he's going to probably get the W here.
All right. Well, you got me going with that, the line that you just said, and I was like, I got to know more about this guy than I previously knew. So now I'm looking at his record on SureDog, and you're right. He has fought and beat some top-notch guys. I mean, I see Hannes Torres, who's been considered one of the best for a while now. So, with that kind of and Trinado, he beat him too, and Luis Santos. I mean, even though he's been fighting mostly Brazilian guys, there are names on here that I recognize. So I can't fault you for making that line. It looks like he probably should be the favorite in this fight.
Well, and other spots had him lower as well. So the public, in some cases, did come in and bet Martins early, and Gurgel, as he became a bigger underdog, I should say, in the betting public's eyes. And I think they're on the right track here. Like I said, you can't really count Gurgel out, but I think with the layoff, with everything coming into play here, Martins definitely has a better future. He's the better prospect here overall, and I think George, unfortunately, is kind of on his way out the door.
All right. Well, we'll go with that on the bet line then, and we'll see what happens. But I will not make any predictions this time like I did on the last one because I was wildly wrong. So I'm just going to let you tell me who the favorite is between Michael Bravo and Esteban Payan.
Well, this one's a pretty close one here. Payan's coming in at minus 155. Comeback on Bravo's around plus 125. So slight favor for Esteban here. He's, again, one of those cases that he's a little bit more well-rounded. Bravo's got a few more holes in his game. Not a lot of people know about Bravo, but I think this fight is probably going to play out on the feet, I should say. And if that's the case, Bravo definitely has a really good, more than a puncher's chance, really. Because on feet, I mean, he comes from a kickboxing background. He's aggressive. He's got a ton of power. So if it stays up, it could go either way. I think Esteban should really look to utilize a little bit of his ground game. He's a little bit better on the ground. He's not bad on the feet as well. I think it's going to be competitive on the feet. And Esteban can actually maybe score a KO of his own. So it's going to be that competitive on the feet. But I think that it's Bravo's world on the feet more so, if that makes sense. So this is a fight that I could really see going either way. But Esteban comes in as a slight favorite. His resume is a little bit more impressive. And I think he's just a little bit more solid overall.
Interesting trivia note for our listeners. If he goes on and wins this fight and is brought over to the UFC side when Zuffa completely dissolves Strikeforce, he'll be one of the few guys who's fought in Strikeforce, Bellator, and UFC because he was on the inaugural Bellator card. The very first Bellator event, he fought and beat Luis Palomino. So, yeah, he's a well-rounded guy. You're right. Esteban's been around for a while, so we'll see if he can get the job done here. But let's move on to the Showtime fights. One's airing on Showtime Extreme and then the main card on Showtime. And they've really stacked this up. I mean, to me, there's not a missable fight here anywhere, which I suppose if you're going to go out with a bang, final Strikeforce card ever, that's what you should do. But some of these Showtime Extreme prelims could have been main events on other Strikeforce cards. Like, for example, Tim Kennedy, any fight he's in, I would want to be a main event of a card, even if it was a minor card. And KJ Noons has been a main eventer in cards. So, take your pick here, Nick. Which one do you want to talk about first?
Well, I guess we'll go kind of in the fight order. What I assume at least is the fight order. We'll start off with KJ Noons and Ryan Couture. Now, this man is going to be an interesting fight. I think a lot of people think Noons is kind of going to overmatch Couture. Ryan Couture's kind of not ready for KJ at this point of his career. I kind of disagree. I know Noons, I've seen the improvement in his game as well. Obviously, we know what he brings to the table. He's got outstanding hands, outstanding boxing. He's got the knockout power. His takedown defense is getting pretty solid. His sub defense is getting better as well. So he's working on his wrestling, been working on his ground game. We all know that. But Ryan Couture is the more overall, again, talented fighter, I think, of the two. On the feet, even, he's going to probably have some problems or give some problems to Noons. I think his footwork, his movement, his leg kicks, everything. He mixes up his combinations a little bit better than Nunes. Nunes is, of course, better, like I said, with his hands and his boxing a little bit, and always more of a threat for the knockout here. But this is another fight that I could see Ryan Couture step in here and possibly pull off the upset. So KJ's coming in as a favorite. He's minus 175 right now. Couture's plus 145. So almost 2-1 for KJ, but a fairly competitive line all considering.
Yeah, and I think the thing people forget about Ryan Couture is, yeah, he is relatively young. He's only had 6 fights so far in his career, but he's only lost one of those 6, and it was a decision. And people would look at it and go, KJ Nunes is a former boxer. He's got more striking power. But you said it yourself, Nick. I think Ryan Couture is probably the more well-rounded, even though he's younger in the sport, just because with his dad, there's no way he could be anything but well-rounded. He would not get let off the hook if he tried to go out there and be a single discipline fighter. So he's got a better chance as long as he avoids the power punch. And KJ, who's been trying to improve his game for a long time, as you said, is probably not going to rely just on the power punch. So if it comes straight down to 2 guys trying to do everything in a well-rounded way, I'd give Couture the narrow edge on that.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that's why if you're going to bet this fight, I wouldn't probably lay the juice on KJ Nunes. I'd rather take the dog money on Ryan Couture here because, like I said, I think there's more ways for Ryan to win, including possibly a close decision. So I could see KJ maybe, stopping the fight with his power. I could see KJ, of course, getting a decision. That's why he's the favorite, but I think it's going to be close enough that Ryan Couture could be some value here, plus 145.
I think you're right. So next on the card, if we're going in order, would be Tim Kennedy and Trevor Smith. What do you think about this one?
Well, this is another kind of decent favorite here in Tim Kennedy. Minus 450, he comes in and against Trevor Smith, which is coming into plus 300. Now, Trevor Smith, I mean, if you look at the line, I think a lot of people are going to think that I have no respect for Trevor Smith, making him that high of an underdog. I do. I know he's a talented guy, especially in the grappling realm. He's definitely a guy you got to watch out for. His submission game is outstanding, but I just don't see an area that he's better than Tim Kennedy in this fight. Maybe the grappling is the key for him, but I think Kennedy's going to be able to keep this fight on the feet, and on the feet he's going to be able to do more damage and probably pick Trevor Smith apart. And then, of course, if it does hit the floor, Kennedy's no slouch on the ground himself. So in all areas, all facets of the game, I think that Tim Kennedy could really have his way with Smith, and I think especially if he doesn't get submitted or caught early in round 1 by submission from Smith, as it goes into round 2 or round 3, I don't think Smith's going to make it. I think Kennedy's probably going to end up stopping him. So he's a steep favorite. Like I said, the only outside chance I give Smith is his submission game. Could catch us all by surprise and catch Kennedy, but I doubt it. That's why you're seeing the line a little bit steep as is. So Tim Kennedy should come away with a win here.
I've got to agree because, Tim Kennedy has not picked up a Strikeforce title, but he took 2 Strikeforce middleweight champions 5 rounds trying to get a title. So it strikes me that he's on a higher level, and no pun intended by using the word strike there, but it just doesn't seem like he and Trevor Smith are quite at the same level. You got one guy who's fought at least twice for a world championship and another guy who's up and coming, but maybe not at that level yet. So I don't think your line is wrong at all on that one. In fact, I might have even, if I was making lines, and I know nothing about making lines, I might have put Trevor as a bigger dog than that. So speaking of things I don't know how to make lines for, how'd your Grace get Anthony Smith?
Yeah, this is actually a really tricky one to make a line on because, of course, not a lot of people respect Smith as far as the betting public goes. He is coming off a nice upset win over Labumba. I'm going to pronounce it wrong, but Sayers, whatever his last name. Everybody knows what I'm talking about. So he had a nice upset over Sayers. He dominated that fight, actually. And Smith is a very talented guy, man. For 185, he's kind of been floating under the radar for a while. He's another guy that continues to improve. He's got a solid wrestling game, solid submission game, and of course, he's got devastating knockout power. Now, the thing that scares me about Smith is he gets so aggressive at times. He leaves some openings. He makes some mistakes. He can't afford to do that in his fight with Gracie because Gracie's going to pounce, take advantage, and probably submit him because, of course, Gracie's jiu-jitsu game and his ground game is going to be far above Smith, no matter how good Smith is on the ground. He doesn't want to go there with Gracie. But if Smith fights smart, I think he's more than capable of keeping this fight up on the feet and knocking Gracie out. So the line is minus 280 right now for Gracie. The comeback is plus 210 on Smith. I think the overall betting public's going to think it's an easy win for Gracie. Gracie is coming off that impressive win, I should say, over Jardine there. So, a lot of factors go into that line, but I think it's a little bit high as well. I think Anthony Smith has a way better shot at what the current line is right now. They're pulling off the fight. If he fights smart. So another possible dog here. And I know a lot of people are going to disagree with me on this one.
That's okay. Looking at these 2 guys, I think you've got it right on the mark. And really the only knock I can give Roger Gracie in his career is that he got knocked out by King Mo, which, King Mo tends to make people look bad. That's one of his trademarks. So other than that, I feel like Roger Gracie is looking good going into this fight. And, they didn't give this kid any easy fights coming into his career. He's fought top names. Some of them were names in the past. They were still around, but still, he fought H2O Waterman, Kevin the Monster Randleman, Trevor Prangley. It's not like Gracie hasn't been tested before. So I feel like he can handle what Anthony Smith brings, but Smith brings a lot to the table.
Yeah, he does have tremendous knockout power, man. And if he catches, like I said, if it stays up on the feet, even though Gracie is improving his stand-up, he's going to get put to sleep. I mean, my concern is Smith's chin, but Gracie, I don't think is going to be able to tag that chin. But you never know because Smith's chin is definitely one of his weak spots. And on the ground, there's no question that Gracie has an edge. That's why he is coming in the favorite. He should get the submission win over Smith, but I think, man, there's no way I can lay that price. Minus 280, I can't touch it.
Right, and yeah, one of the things I love just about watching Roger Gracie work is the moment he gets a guy to the ground, the fight's over. It may take him a minute, it may take him 3 minutes, it may take him 4 minutes and 59 seconds, but he's one of those guys that's so good at jiu-jitsu that he can just inch his way to it one position at a time until he gets you in a place where you have nowhere to go and you're going to tap. It's just a beauty to watch.
Yeah, I agree. And there's only a handful of guys you could really say that about, but he's definitely one of them. And that is a beautiful thing to watch.
Indeed. So I don't know if we'll see anything that beautiful in Healy versus Holloway, but it should definitely be an interesting fight.
Yeah, and again, we kind of touched on it. I kind of gave the line earlier a little bit too. Healy's a pretty solid favorite, minus 450. Holloway plus 300. Now, Kurt's going to want to keep this fight on the feet. I think he's got better stand-up than Healy. But again, Healy's probably going to take him down and grind him out. Holloway has been put on his back before. His wrestling's not bad, but it's just not on the level. It shouldn't be on the level of Healy, and Healy's probably just going to grind him out, and maybe even a finish, depending, again, going back to the cardio and what kind of shape Kurt comes in here. So I think Kurt's a pretty decent fighter. Like I said, I think he's more well-rounded, but Healy's grinding style is probably going to be too much for him.
I agree, and since we've already talked about this one a little bit earlier, too, I'll just go ahead and move on, and we'll talk about the main card that airs on Showtime. And it's a free Showtime preview weekend, people, so if you're listening to this right now and going, oh man, this sucks, I don't have Showtime, I'm not going to get to see the last Strikeforce card. You're wrong! You can still watch this card. Just check with your local cable or satellite provider, whoever you've got, and they probably have Showtime available all weekend long. So you can't miss any of these fights. Starting with, at a catch weight of 194 pounds, Ed Short Fuse Herman, former guest of this show, is taking on Jacare Souza. Now, last time I said I think I know what the line is before Nick responds, I was wildly wrong. But now I'm going to go out on a limb again and see if I'm wrong or not and say I expect Jacare is a big favorite here.
Yeah, you're right. Jacare is coming in around minus 365. The comeback on Herman's around plus 265. You know what? You're going to see that line creep up to over 4-1 for sure, too. As the public comes in. It's another one of those kind of tricky lines to set because Ed Herman is a UFC vet, and he gets a lot of respect, as he should, because he's a decent, solid UFC fighter, but the way he matches up with Jacare is just horrible for him. And that's why you're seeing the line so high. And I think, again, betting public's probably going to stick Jacare in parlays, and it's going to be tough. You're going to have to kind of keep the betting public off Jacare here in this fight. I'm not underestimating Herman at all. I just think even in the stand-up, Jacare is obviously known for his ground game, and if it hits the floor, he should be able to submit Ed Herman. But at the same time, I think even if it stays up on the feet, his stand-up, Jacare's stand-up's improved so much that he's got the better stand-up. Herman has that knockout power. He's always going to be a threat on the feet, and it'll be close on the feet. But I do think overall, Jacare's become the better fighter, and Jacare's legit, man. He's definitely one of the best middleweights in the world, in my opinion.
I couldn't disagree with that one bit, and everything you said about Herman is true. He's well-rounded, he's scrappy, he's a UFC veteran, he won't quit in a fight, he's got a lot of heart, but it's just everything that he does, Jacare can do a little bit to a lot better, so it's kind of an unfortunate matchup. I always hate dogging on a guy who's been on our show, but at the same time, it's just a bad matchup for him, so no surprise for the line to be that high. Now, this next one, I have no idea which way the line is going. Gegard Mousasi and Mike Kyle, because both of these guys, I could see a way they win this fight.
Well, this is even actually a steeper line here. Gegard Mousasi's minus 500. The comeback on Mike Kyle is plus 350. Now, I'm a big Kyle supporter, too, so a lot of people, and the people that have, well, first, I'll get your reaction first. Do you think that's a crazy line?
I'm not saying it's crazy, but I just didn't expect Mike Kyle to be that far out of it. I just, that blew my mind.
Well, it's all about matchups, really, and I think that Mike Kyle's just for a horrible matchup against Gegard Mousasi. Gegard's better on the feet. He's obviously the better guy on the ground as well. So no matter where this fight takes place, I think Kyle gets subbed if it hits the floor. I think he has potential to get knocked out if it stays up on the feet. Gegard's wrestling's improved. I mean, he's just a more complete overall fighter. Now, again, this is a guy that has supported Mike Kyle. I've bet him his last few fights actually. And in the line against in his fight, shoot, I'm forgetting what was his last fight? He just got recently knocked out against. Let me see. I'll go to his record real quick. Yeah, exactly. I thought he was going to pull off. Feijao was only like a 2-1 favorite. That's exactly what I was thinking about. So thank you for covering me there. But he was only about a 2-1 favorite, so it was a lot tighter of a line. But the problem with Feijao is he had some holes in his game as well, and the way they matched up, Mike Kyle kind of matched up good with Feijao, better at least. I mean, didn't end up working out for him last fight, but the time before that, he came out with the knockout upset win, of course, there too. But Gegard Mousasi in this fight, he has less holes in his game. He's just the more complete, better fighter everywhere. I think anywhere this fight goes, he could really beat Kyle. And again, this is coming from a guy that really respects what Mike Kyle has done lately. And he's definitely going to have the size. He's going to have the power. He's always dangerous on the feet with the KO stuff. But Gegard's never been put out. He's, like I said, more technical on the feet. I just see there's way too many ways for Gegard to win this fight.
You're probably right. I mean, I'm not going to try to pick it apart too much. My only problem with Gegard Mousasi, and I do think if you put these guys on a page and add up their list of attributes, that Mousasi scores higher overall. But I just, with Mousasi, I always get this nagging feeling that something's going to go wrong when he's not fighting in Japan, because it seems to me like, the Strikeforce Nashville card, for example, he lost the decision to King Mo. And before that, I don't know that people really realized what kind of level King Mo was on. And we all know he's great now, but at the same time, it's like, if you thought, you fought at the guy that beat Sokaju and Sabral and Mark Hunt and even beat Jacare, you would have thought he'd have an easy time with King Mo, and he didn't. So there's always just that little nagging doubt in my head. I mean, he went to a draw with Keith Jardine in a fight he probably should have won, but at the same time, it's things like that that make me have little doubts.
Well, that fight with Jardine, he did win that fight. I mean, all of us that were watching that fight, except the judges, and everything that factored in that night, it was craziness. I mean, they fight again. There's no doubt that Mousasi gets another stoppage or clear win there. But you got to take everything into consideration, like I said.
Yeah, for me, it's just a discipline thing. It's like it's fault that he threw an illegal up kick. I mean, yeah, he won that fight, but at the same time, he lost that fight. He shouldn't have any excuses. The guy should know the rules of the sport by now.
Oh yeah, now definitely. If he matches up with Jacare I'm talking about the up kick that he caught Jacare with. Are you talking about? I'm sorry.
Oh no, he had an illegal up kick in the Keith Jardine fight.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, that's the up kick that you're talking about. Yeah, I know. Like I said, there's certain circumstances that night that everything went down, but I think clearly, I mean, in our eyes and most people's eyes out there, Mousasi beat Jardine that night. I mean, the decision, it went the way it went. A lot of factors into that, but there's no doubt who was the better fighter that night. Mousasi was. And I think that he's, again, the better fighter here. The only way Kyle can win this fight, really, I don't think he's going to be able to even lay and prey on him, because I think Mousasi is good enough to catch Kyle from submission. So I think Kyle has to knock him out, and Gegard's just a hard guy to knock out.
I'll give you that one. And that was probably what I was thinking, too, going into this fight, was that he had a puncher's chance, because I've seen Kyle get overmatched by guys much bigger than him and still be able to go out there and tag him. So for me, that's what I was thinking going into this fight. But at the end of the day, I'm going to agree with your line and say Mousasi is the favorite, and rightly so. And this time, I hope I'm not wrong. Josh Barnett, I've got to assume, is a huge favorite against Nandor Guillermo.
Yeah, he is a huge favorite. You're talking 1550. The comeback on Nandor is plus 850. So huge, outrageous 15-1 favorite for Barnett. And you know what? That's kind of rightfully so as well. If you look at it, I just don't see a way that Nandor wins this fight. I mean, he is aggressive on the feet. He's sloppy aggressive. He could, I guess, catch Barnett with one of those haymakers that he throws, but I highly doubt it. Barnett's just better, clearly better everywhere. He's probably going to take him down. And, even though Nandor does have a ground game, he's probably going to get the submission win. If not, he's going to get stoppage from Mound due to strike, something like that. I expect Barnett to just roll in this fight.
Yeah, I don't want to say that anybody is a gift or a tomato can in MMA, because anything can happen, but you almost get the feeling looking at this fight that they've given Barnett his entry into UFC. They've given him a fight on Showtime with a guy that he's clearly overmatched to, that if he goes out and wins impressively, he's just written his ticket back into the UFC roster.
Yeah, I agree with you completely. I mean, they're kind of they're trying to give some gifts away on this card. That's what the way Zuffa set it up. I think I firmly believe that. I think they want to get some of these favorites a win and an impressive win. So when they do make the transfer over to the UFC, they have a little bit more, on their resume, a little bit. They look a little bit better going into over to the UFC, I think. And that's like you said, right now, Josh Barnett getting matched up with this guy here. That's exactly what you're seeing.
Yeah. Now, it's probably not quite as severe of a case of being a tomato can or a gift with Cormier and Sterling, but at the same time, I would expect Cormier to roll in that fight.
Well, you know what? It's the same type of line too. Cormier is actually a little bit higher. He's 1750. Now, again, some spots actually out there opened it below 10-1, so it was around. I believe somebody opened it around 700, 750, and the betting public quickly bet it up over 12-1. So I got to see which way the betting public was, of course. So it made my job a lot easier, to set the line for this one. But of course, Daniel Cormier just outmatches him big time. I mean, he's not going to be able to keep Cormier from taking him down. I'm talking about the dog here, Starring here. He's not going to be able to keep from Cormier dumping him on his back and having his way with him. And even on the feet, Cormier is going to be able to hang with him, even though Starring has that stand-up advantage. At least on paper, he should. I don't think he really does in the fight, too. So it's just a big-time uphill battle for Cormier. And Cormier has gotten that respect from the overall public. I think a lot of people believe he's in the top 5, definitely in the world, and on a lot of rankings he is as well. So Cormier, in everybody's mind, including the betting public, is one of the top heavyweights in the world. And when you're talking about heavyweights, I mean, you have to put a lot of emphasis on that, and the betting public comes in heavy and hard on some of these guys. So you have to go outrageous with some of these guys, and including Cormier here. So that's why you're seeing all these numbers are inflated. Barnett, that line's a little bit overinflated. Cormier, that line's, of course, a little bit overinflated. But you have to take into consideration everybody's going to be parlaying these guys as well. So, I mean, you have to go sky high with it. And it would be a huge, shocking upset if Dion Starring pulls off the upset over Daniel Cormier.
Yeah, I can't disagree because I said I expected him to roll in this fight. But I never like to completely dismiss a guy who's had over 30 fights in his career and won 75% or more of them. I mean, Sterling may not be on the level of Cormier because, as you said, Cormier is probably top 10, top 5 in anybody's list at heavyweight. And if he drops down to the light heavyweight, he might be the same ranking there too. And a lot of people want to see him do that. I don't know if he's ready for it. And as I say on this show all the time, if Cormier keeps winning at heavyweight, why should he switch? It's the same thing I say about Big Country, John Jones, GSP, everybody else. If they're winning at the weight class they're in, why should they move to a different weight class? And as long as Cormier continues to dominate the way we've seen him do so, I think he'll be just fine in this fight, and I think he's got a big future coming in the UFC.
Yeah, the guy's going to get paid some big bucks, and deservingly so. And you know what? He's a fresh, I should say a nice addition, because the heavyweights really needed somebody like Cormier to step in there. So it's nice to see the last couple of years him kind of step up in the forefront and get the respect he's got, because with his, even his striking on the feet, his dynamic power, everything, he's fun to watch. He makes fun. Heavyweights that are fun to watch are kind of a rare breed anymore, it seems like, unfortunately. So Daniel Cormier could do it all pretty much. So you got to love that.
Absolutely. So we've got one fight left on this Strikeforce card, and it's a doozy. Tarek Saffiedine, some people call him the sponge because he soaks up everything and gets better with each fight. But Nate Marquardt has proved that he deserves to be still considered in the upper echelons of welterweights in the world. So I imagine the line is a little closer than Cormier and Sterling.
Yeah, it's actually fairly competitive. It's actually the most competitive line on the whole main card, as it should be, because this is a title fight, so I hope so. Marquardt's coming in minus 275. The comeback on Saffiedine's plus 215. So Marquardt almost a 3-1 favorite over Saffiedine. And you know what? Tariq's got a really good shot, I think, here in pulling off the upset. A lot of people are going to disagree again, but this is a 5-round title fight. I know Nate Marquardt has good gas. Saffiedine's got good gas as well. He's not going to have the problem, I think, that Woodley had against Marquardt in his last fight. Now, of course, the wrestling factor is going to come into play here. Marquardt has the better wrestling. He should be able to kind of control where the fight goes, control the tempo here. But I think Saffiedine's takedown defense continues to improve. He keeps on really working his butt off. He knows what to expect. He knows what Marquardt's game plan is going to be in this fight. He's not going to even though Marquardt's more than capable of hanging in there on the feet as well with a lot of these guys, I think that he's at a disadvantage, believe it or not, with Saffiedine on the feet. And he's not going to want to keep it there. He's going to try to want to get this fight to the ground and try to control and grind out a decision here. Tariq's going to be a hard guy to stop, so he's going to be there, I think, all 5 rounds. And in those 5 rounds, there's a good shot that he ends up catching Marquardt. So another fight that Marquardt should be a solid favorite. I agree with you. He's definitely one of the best welterweights in the world. The guy's so talented everywhere. I mean, if you're talking about the guy's wrestling, if the perfect blueprint for a fighter, I mean, you can't get much more wrong than, or I should say more correct than Nate Marquardt if you're building a blueprint, because the guy's got solid stand-up, solid wrestling, solid BJJ. Everywhere he's solid. I mean, he's got the heart, he's got the fight IQ everywhere. He's just that type of fighter. So I do think, though, that people are going to estimate Saffiedine in this fight, and I think Tariq, like I said, in 5 rounds, has enough power and has enough ability on the feet to make things interesting. And if he does rock Nate, he's got that killer instinct. I think he could finish him as well. So I don't think the decision's probably going to go Saffiedine's way, but inside the distance, possibly. So that's kind of where I'm leaning a little bit right now, but it wouldn't shock me if Nate pulls it off. He looked tremendous in his last fight, and, he's always been a solid middleweight as well. So Nate Marquardt at welterweight is definitely a threat.